Hello, everybody. Thank you for turning on this podcast called When I'm High. I hope you listened to the very long part 1 of Jaime's interview. We talked. I think we were recording for over 2 hours. I got it down to under 2 hours, and I split these up mostly into 2 parts if they're long enough, and this was definitely long enough to do that. So here we go with the also very long part 2. And so you mentioned writing these things down. I'm guessing so. It sounds like so you wouldn't forget them, and obviously memory is a huge thing. Losing some memory when people are high is a big thing of that. So, what in general, what is your memory like? Are you able to hold on to those things, or is that why you were writing these down in your journal?
I have kept a journal or a diary when I was back in, 5th grade and first started writing what was happening for a really long time. And I would say my historical knowledge and retention of the minutia even beyond that, it's probably my memory has not been super great, and there's probably a whole lot of reasons for that. Some of them, just some childhood trauma, things like that just kind of shut things down. And I have found that going back over the years and pulling out my journal from when I was 24, it's amazing to both, see my growth and remember what had happened, because sometimes it had nothing to do with being high or not.
Right.
But my memory just, I'm like, oh, that happened? I don't remember that. And so I think especially with being 20 years older than my 22-year-old journal, that it's really I know now how much I value those writings and what they're able to afford me later to really bring me back to a place and to an experience.
Yeah. So that you knew, obviously, because this has been a habit for many years, that you knew that you just wanted to write this down so you could keep this log of your life, and then obviously maybe 20 years you're going to look back on it and remember it. And then in terms of just marijuana in general, do you feel like your memory is changed when you get high?
I'm not sure. I think part of why I'm not sure is because most of the times, so there was almost a 20-year gap of me being a regular user. And so all of the rest of that experience has been pretty recent, and I don't feel like there's any memory loss from that, the more recent experiences, but I'm not sure.
Or maybe you're just not aware of the memory loss.
That's fair
Totally
too.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, if nothing's jumping out at you, then it sounds like that might not necessarily be a thing that affects you quite as much as other people. So,
And again, I think I'm really regulating my intake in a
right.
way that other people don't. And so, just like when people drink so much that they black out, I also, not that, it doesn't quite work the same way with cannabis, but I'm always taking a relatively measured amount. And so probably not enough, a heavy of enough usage to kind of really lose memory of the events.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's always a very small dose, so it's not going to affect you as much as when you double or triple that dose. That's probably where the memory loss is going to start to happen.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned creativity before. That's obviously one of my questions. I guess the first question is, do you do things that are considered creative or that you consider creative? And then how does marijuana affect that creativity?
Yeah. So aside from the writing, but most of that is reflection writing. It's not necessarily creating something new. It's certainly describing things with my words and being, detailed in that way. But I dance, and I have really enjoyed what that feels like, and how the experience is altered when I'm high. And I think about one of the classes I took during, I think, shelter in place earlier this year. So it was probably like 6 months ago, that I didn't plan on it, but all of a sudden I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna take an edible. And
Hmm.
the experience was also so much more as the same as when I smoke or take an edible and then just do my own dancing in the house. And it allows you to connect with the music in a really deeper sort of way, or at least a different sort of a way that really is mental and physical. So all the things that we've been talking about thus far, like really highlights that, and how getting lost in that sensory space when you're moving for creativity, and it's not anything planned, but it's just freestyle dancing,
Hmm.
how it is such a visceral experience as a result.
Yeah. Do you feel like you end up doing things differently, dancing, doing different moves when you get high, or is it more of just the feeling of the dancing? Like a lot of people have mentioned, like stretching obviously feels very good when they get high. Is it more of the feeling of the dancing that's different, and your connection to the music?
So there's the connection to the music definitely feels much deeper, but I probably am, and I already move relatively slowly for the dancing that I'm doing, but I think I move even slower and more intentionally, and there is a stretching that's involved too. It's so easy to move from in any type of dance one move to another move without fully elongating your body or your limbs, or stopping for a moment, especially if it's ever something that you want someone else to see. If you just keep moving, there's like the viewer doesn't have the same amount of appreciation for what's happening because it's just
Hmm.
happening so fast in front of them. And so, I when I'm high and dancing, it is the mental and the physical that's making me move slower and stretch more and really enunciate every all of my movements.
Yeah. And so I have a sort of challenging question for you, I guess, which is, do you think that you are actually moving slower, or does it just feel slower because everything feels slower when you get high?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, and but I would say that I am feeling even the movement all that much more, which is something that in freestyle dancing you really want to get to that place anyway.
Hmm.
That's typically something that you it is all about the emotion, the interpretation of whatever you're hearing in the music, or and how that connects to what your experiences are. And so the ability to really make that connection and probably turn some things off is probably also what's happening. Like that, just like the rest of the mental chatter that allows you to be focused and present,
Hmm.
um, also allows you to do that when you're being creative in that way.
Yeah. And whether or not you are literally moving slower doesn't really matter. It's the
Hmm.
fact that you are thinking that you're moving slower, and that you are more focused on the movements is what actually matters.
Yeah, and the experience.
Yeah, yeah. So taking music, transitioning into that, what is your this this does isn't about the dancing necessarily, but what is your experience like of music when you get high? Just the music itself.
Yeah, again, coming back to that sensory experience and sensual experience of how what I like about being high, I think the instead of having music on in the background when you're doing something else, or you might be cooking or whatever. I'm not multitasking when I'm high, ever,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think. So that singular focus on music when I'm not typically just singularly focused on it is feels like a gift in some ways, because you're just really able to take in how it makes you feel. And whether or not I was dancing or not, I'm actually thinking about And this makes me say, yes, I have been able to carry forward the feeling of being high. Um, there's a song by Tori Amos called Putting the Damage On, and it is orchestral. It is really, it starts out small and really builds and is dramatic like Tori Amos music typically tends to be. And I listened to it sometime this summer high, and then every time I've listened to it again, I have really just felt all of that. The building of the song. I've been able to tap back into that experience when I
Mm-hmm.
was high, into that not being high.
Right. And so you had heard the song before, you had listened to it this summer when high, but for some reason that moment, that memory of that situation this summer sort of changed your experience of that song going
hmm
forward.
And I was able to tap back into it and get back there.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's sort of it affected your life going forward. You know, if you hadn't had that one experience, when you heard the song, you might be much more passive about it, but it brought sort of all those emotions back.
Yeah, I'm appreciating you asking that question, because now I'm like, oh, I wonder how many songs I feel like that about.
Right,
It's
right.
probably more than just that one if I really start going back through the catalog. hmm
And then I guess you could talk about that song specifically or just music in general. Do you feel like you are noticing things in the music differently that you maybe hadn't noticed before? That could be about the music or the lyrics.
I actually feel like it's more about having the full experience
Mm,
of a song. So the lyrics, the music, but all of it fully, where, it's easy to tune any parts of a song out um, at any time. I feel like it's just like, okay, I'm listening to the beat, I'm not listening to the lyrics, or I'm listening to the lyrics and not listening to the music. Um, that's behind the lyrics. I feel like there is just this fullness and this full experience that listening to music while high provides. Like I feel like this is the whole song. You're getting it.
mm. So you're able to maybe not focus on specific things, but you're more focusing on the piece as a whole altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, the sensory part of that, it all makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I guess when you're sober, how do you listen to music? Are you somebody who listens to the lyrics more, the music more, or do you listen to the whole thing and then when you get high, it's just more intense?
Yeah, I definitely listen to. Oh, I think it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm dancing, I'm often feeling the beat and
Mm-hmm.
the actual instrumental part of the song more than the song, the lyrics that themselves, or it. I'm not going to try to correct myself. Then going like, but if it's something I'm listening to that is intentionally for just listening. Like I like the message or the lyrics. Then I'm usually much more of a lyric person,
Mm-hmm.
and so being high and listening to music merges my normal intention with the full experience.
Right, right. So sometimes it's more about the music, sometimes it's more about the lyrics, but the getting high sort of puts it all together, which is
hmm
very cool.
hmm
Yeah. So similar to movies and TV shows, do you you had said in the past you had watched things when you were first getting high. What about these days? What do you watch? And then obviously there's Parks and Rec. How is your experience of that thing different when you get high?
Also, I think that I am clearing away all the other details that are happening around me when I'm watching something and I'm high. So
Mm-hmm.
if there's a cat meowing or a dog barking or something loud happening outside the window with autos, like I just won't really hear it, and I will just really be able to focus in on what's happening on the screen in front of me instead of being just bombarded with so many other sensory experiences simultaneously. And so that there's probably so much more that I'm taking in, just like the music, that because I'm able to cut away all the other distractions and just focus on the show or the movie that's in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely something I've learned from going through all these interviews, which I guess at this point is probably like over 60, that it sort of all comes down to focus in different ways. Bigger focus, more expansive, or more fine tuned. It always sort of comes down to some level of focus. And that's great. Normally you might be distracted by those things and you
Hmm.
might not be able to focus in on that thing, which is totally fine too. But yeah, if you actually want to watch the show or the movie, whatever it is, then that's going to help allow you to not get distracted by those other things.
And related to that, which I feel like I don't even, it's probably like antithetical, like to meditation, but I actually have meditated a few times this summer while high. And
Yes.
wow, I mean, it just allowed me to have such a different experience. And often, part of what meditation's trying to get you to do is deal with the humanity or of how that's a weird way of saying it, but like the way that the human mind works, there is distraction. There's so much going on, and that's just the way our brains work. And so if you're able to tone that all down, you have this different experience, and it's flexing a muscle. It's you get better over time, but then there are
Hmm.
days that it's just not good anyway, and you're still continuing to have all these other thoughts flooding through. But and so because of the part of the practice being the practice, I feel like this is not what people who truly do meditation would probably like to hear, but it was amazing to be able to just be so present, be able to have that full experience. For me, meditation, I always see light or colors ebbing and flowing, behind my closed eyelids, and if there's sun, that plays into it as well. But it was amazing to be meditating high, and it just, I think, took my brain to a totally different place, almost more like mushrooms.
Mm. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. Yeah, I definitely understood what you meant by, the world is filled with these distractions, and that's sort of how our society works. And we're always doing stuff. Obviously, it depends on where you live and what your life is like. But yeah, there's always stuff happening, and so yeah, the focus of meditation is to start to ignore those things and turn those things off and get back to just your thoughts or even no thoughts if you can get to that
Hmm.
point.
Hmm.
And so you may not have details on this, but what was it, how was the meditation different? What happened that was different? Do you feel that before getting high you were able to have a quote unquote successful meditation, and then yeah, how did getting high change that?
So I am truly loving how other questions you've asked keep popping up in my responses right now. So in ways that it took further prodding to be
Hmm.
able to get there. So this year also was really the first time that meditation ever did anything for me. And I felt like it was a tool that I needed. And I think a lot of it has been related to the pandemic, but I started before then. But I found myself trying to meditate more often. It particularly started in April doing daily meditation through Instagram Live. But I really, for a long time, I was struggling with meditation, and I just, it wasn't doing, it didn't feel like it was doing anything for me. Like I wasn't connecting with it in that phase of my life. And I wonder, because it is now, it's something that feels very restorative. It feels like part of like the tools in my toolbox for all sorts of mental health and well-being, that I wonder how those times that I was high, that I'm actually carrying forward into my mostly non-high meditation,
Hmm.
how I've been carrying that experience with me forward, like the song, like,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, yeah. So the being high and meditating experience, again, back to your note about focus, and it kind of the thread between all of your 60 interviews being focus. I think that also, again, just let me move away all of those distractions and fully experience what the best version of meditation is for me, which is it just feels like there's visuals with it, behind my closed eyelids. There's the disconnection from my body, but just almost like pulsing lights and colors behind my eyes. That's what I'm focused on, and there's no other thoughts.
Mm. Yeah, that seems like the goal with meditation is to get to no thoughts. And I was actually just going to ask, when you meditate, do you have thoughts? Um, and then when you meditate when you're high, do you still have thoughts? Do you have more thoughts? Do you have less thoughts? I guess I'm mostly curious about how do your thoughts change when you get high and meditate?
So I'm actually doing a 30 days of compassion meditation series right now, like through November, and it's being led by three different women, and we meet the same time every day throughout the month, and it's been really interesting, that they're to get more into this philosophy behind, or all the different philosophies behind meditating, of like, it's okay that you have thoughts that come in your mind while you're meditating, but how you treat them and
Mm-hmm.
react to them is really the key. You can just say, okay, thanks for coming, move along, or you can be like, oh, I just thought something. Oh, I'm not supposed to be thinking anything. Like you can
Right.
react really differently to that. And meditation is intended to just let the thoughts go. Um, we'll see you again later. Thanks for coming. Um, and so I think the when I'm high, I have, because I'm so into the meditation, and it's really, I've only done it like twice, I think, this whole year where I have been high while meditating. I am not even sure if it's that I'm having less thoughts, but it actually might be that I'm just being kinder to the thoughts that are coming in and being like, okay,
Ah,
carry on.
right. There's maybe less judgment of having the thoughts in the first place.
Yeah, and not distracted by, oh no, I thought about something, like, and I'm not meditating anymore. Yeah, but just letting it pass.
Yeah, I don't remember if I've mentioned here, but I think I have mentioned on my dictionary podcast, at least a couple of times. It's really amazing how just sitting quietly for 5 minutes will be very restorative, be very helpful to you. And then, when you can bump that up to taking 15 to 30 minutes of really, that's what meditation is. There's obviously lots of different forms, but just sitting quietly, maybe focusing on your breath, maybe not focusing on your breath, and just not doing anything is so amazing for the mind and the body, especially the mind. And yeah, I think what you said about, just letting it happen and not being judgmental, not having an expectation of, what I'm saying now isn't about being high, it's about meditation, but that's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of letting it happen, whatever happens happens, and not being judgmental about whatever happens. It's just very helpful. So I guess that's my PSA for the day, which is just try and do that, once a day, even once a week, just to get into the habit of it. It's really, really helpful to everything.
Well, but I'll bring it back to being high, because
Yeah.
I think that truly that is a lot of the experience, is like when I am being, getting high, that not with the intention that there's going to be any judgmental, anything judgmental happening. It is to relax, to just be, which is what meditation is supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of amazing. And then after the meditation, how do you feel? Do you um are you still high? I guess what's sort of the post meditation feeling like?
So super interestingly, it almost is like I'm sober afterwards.
Ah,
Yeah, there's something about whatever's happening with brain chemistry, and that is a real thing with meditation of like how many like neural pathways you can recreate and build because of meditation. There's something similarly to having an orgasm when I'm drinking, like that will kill, like that it's just done. Like my buzz is gone. I think that there must be something with that release of meditating while high that I'm just like, okay, my brain's like, I'm recalibrated now.
Right, right.
Yeah. Hmm.
You sort of used it up or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, so since you mentioned that last thing, this is obviously, don't get into any more detail than you want, but how is sex different when you're high, if that is something that you've experienced?
Yeah, so I really appreciated that short earlier part of the podcast series. I've just listened to it last week, I think. So I actually never really considered it. And I think also, like many of your participants in the spliced interviews talking about sex when high, when I was younger, I think because of how I was getting high, it was always like in social situations. It wasn't anything that yeah, it was never going
Right,
to
right.
be happening then. But so having conversations with other people now, like actually somebody was like, you have to have sex while you're high. It is so good. Like, and I'm like, oh, okay. And whether masturbating or sex, I find it that there are so many, again, back to the sensory parts of what I really experience when I'm high, the sensations and the experience is just that much more. It's wonderful.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that, especially in that specific situation, the sensory, if there's even more senses happening, that's definitely a good thing. And then on the mental side, and then I'm gonna ask about food after this. There's the physical senses. I have a feeling that I know what you're gonna say when it comes to food, but there's the mental side as well. Is your view of this specific situation different mentally?
Hmm.
And this is where I think it's interesting how people are different, because some people, a few people specifically I can remember off the top of my head that I've interviewed, do tend to get much more physical and sensory when they get high. But then I think there are other people who get a lot more mental with it. So I guess I'm just, I always like to ask about both, because you never really know how somebody experiences it.
Yeah, so I guess if we're still talking about sex,
Right.
and being high, then I have actually always it it's been my growth as a sexual person has been like getting out of my head and and truly just having the physical sensations, which is why most of us are doing that in the first place. Not that there's not connection and all of those other
Hmm.
things where there can be, but I often find, and especially having a female brain, there's like just so many things going on constantly. It's like, just stop and focus on this one thing. Come on.
Right, right.
um, and so I actually feel like that has been helpful for that mental side of it, of like just being able to be fully present and
Hmm.
have the full physical experience and not need to and not have my brain jumping all over the place.
Right. And based on your past responses to other questions, that fits in.
Hmm.
You're able to get less distracted and just focus on that one
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
And then so relatedly with food, what's the physical experience like, and then what's the mental experience like?
So food has been so interesting to me since, again, I, smoked before and then kind of stopped using for almost 20 years and then started using it again. When I was younger, definitely was like super snacky and wanted, um, I think I enjoyed all the tastes, but it was more about the physical need to eat more than or the feeling like the physical drive to eat rather than the experience of what I was actually eating, like the taste. As opposed to now, I actually don't find, I mean, I think that the tastes themselves I really am enjoying, and I'm like noticing the nuances, but which is actually not what you asked. I that is what you asked. What I was going to say though was that I don't have any of those munchies anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just not a thing anymore, which is super fascinating. And I don't know if it's because of edibles versus smoking or just better quality. I don't know, or just that my own body has changed. But yes, the taste. I mean, I am noticing more of the nuances in the taste, but I'm often not eating anything.
Right. So because you don't necessarily get the munchies, the food isn't necessarily a part of your life when you get high. But
Hmm.
when you do, you are noticing the flavors a bit more.
Hmm.
Um, and then I guess that's more of the physical. I guess on the mental side, do you feel like there's any difference, or is that might actually be the sort of the physical and the mental combined?
Yeah, yeah, I think it is, and because I'm often, as we talked about earlier, this is usually there's an open space, like I have enough time to fully enjoy the experience. Often it's evening. I might have eaten already.
Hmm.
And so I just am not ending up, yeah, I'm usually not eating when I'm high
Right.
anymore, which is so interesting.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's some experimentation in your future of, let's see what this food is like.
Yes.
Let's see. So you had mentioned sometimes you try this, or sometimes you get high before you go to bed just to help you sleep and help you
Hmm.
turn off your brain, which sounds like a sort of a common theme. Um, do you notice your sleep being affected at all, or your dreams being affected?
I have not noticed anything specifically about my dreams, but certainly I would say I'm sleeping more restfully, which is always interesting because you can also drink and it can put you to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But that sleep, also very well researched and documented, is not good sleep. It's not good quality. You're not getting into all the sleep cycles where whatever's happening when you're high, it's actually letting you have the full experience. So you're getting the full sleep cycles, and I always feel very rested and the next day.
That's good. It's another argument for, I guess, cannabis over alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's what this podcast is about, but it does come up sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, sort of tagging on to meditation a bit, do you consider yourself a spiritual person, a religious person? And then how do you feel like cannabis has affected that in your life? Especially because you've started up more recently. That might be a different thing for you than others.
Yeah, I feel like I am not a religious person. I would say that I'm spiritual and really feeling like everything is connected and intertwined. And yeah, there's we could go so many places with that, but I'm trying to think about what I would say most of those like the behaviors around my spirituality were already there
Mm-hmm.
before cannabis. Although I have been, and this is also something interesting that I don't know that I'll have the answer to right now, but because I really started using more and more regularly this year again is when I really started getting into meditation, which a lot of people associate with spirituality. Um, Doing more full moon, new moon rituals of like letting things go or coming up with new things that you want to invite in, different moon cycles. And that's also been evolving and really been doing more of that this year as well. And so I'm not totally sure if that's pandemic, if it's regular cannabis usage, if it's just my spiritual journey as a whole. But those things have all been happening in parallel this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like this year is sort of I don't know. I feel like it's the exception to the rule. Everything is just different and wonky and weird. And yeah, it's hard to know, is this because of this year? Is it because of something else? Who knows?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think so do you feel when you get high, that idea of everything being connected, does that come up when you get high? Do you think about that even more so? Do you think about other things, or do those things not really play into your brain when you get high?
They have not, as far as I'm aware,
Yeah. I feel like
really.
if they had, you would be aware.
Yeah, I would say mushrooms is something that for sure, like that's always like the cornerstone of my experience, and that's also been a really long time since I've used those, but it was always very spiritual. But I feel like again with cannabis, it's so sensory and present for me. th- Why? What's happening for me when I'm getting high. So I think that's probably why it's a little less mental or spiritual.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like maybe I need to do another podcast just about mushrooms, because that people have brought those up, and it's like there's part of me that wants to delve into that, even though I mean it's because I think it's interesting. But then I'm like, well, this is about cannabis, but does it really matter? I mean, it's still mind altering.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's probably a whole other topic that we could get
Yeah.
into. Let's see. So I'm sure people are like, yeah, let's talk about that.
Well, it's so
Um,
interesting because it's also becoming recreationally, at least, or maybe not an unfinable offense if you're caught with it. It's being used,
decriminalized.
yeah, medicinally,
Yeah.
um, and it has been. So there's a lot of parallels.
Yes, yes, for sure. It's just, a couple of steps behind. I know Denver decriminalized it. I think, oh, man, I can't remember the details. Colorado as a state might actually be working on legalizing it, at least for medicinal purposes. But yeah, I mean that's really the next one that's coming through, because there clearly is a lot of evidence medicinally, from
Yes, yes.
microdosing for
Hmm.
PTS. That, yeah, we talk about that every once in a while here. Yeah, that's, like I said, that's a whole other topic to get into. Let's see. So in your training for this, your startup, your
Hmm.
dispensary,
Hmm.
in the training that you've done, do you feel like that you've learned more about the science of cannabis? Do you feel like you're turning into a little bit of a pot nerd or a connoisseur?
So one of the things that Perception Farms is really focused on is, there's a lot of cruddy quality cannabis that's out there, or at least is just being manufactured on a such a big scale that quality is often it's just you're not doing quantity and quality at the same time. It's hardly ever you're getting that in many things. It's rare that you're able to achieve quality and quantity.
Mm-hmm.
And so my partners who have been lifelong, they didn't take a 20 year break on using cannabis. They are so focused on our company really producing quality cannabis, and so because of that, I've looked at things so differently. Whether it's our grower that's been working in Colorado, and he would be coming here to help us set up shop. And just seeing his pictures on Instagram of like what he's growing, just appreciating the beauty of it. We also went to Colorado to visit a dispensary and a grow operation last December. Oh, it feels like forever ago. Um, but it was amazing to actually merge some of my day job work of horticulture into this new field and this new venture and entrepreneurialism, and really it's just amazing like what, yeah, all the systems you can set up and how many different ways you can grow buds specifically. Less about the
Mm-hmm.
processing, but yes, I've learned so much. I'm probably getting to be a little bit more of a nerd. I will never probably get anywhere near where my partners are, because they're also scientists and they
Ah,
really, yeah, they. truly, truly geek out on all the nuances, including now all the oh God, there's so many like micro images now of what the THC actually looks like. That there's been a lot that's been coming out lately just to like really understand like what those molecules look like
Mm,
and yeah, which I'm seeing because of that experience, but or because
yeah.
of my relationship with the company. Yeah.
So you're clearly learning a lot more about the process. Do you feel like that do you find it interesting? Do you feel like your appreciation towards cannabis in general and getting high is different because you're learning more?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And I know other past guests that you've had when, talking about, strains that they use for this or that. I would say, again, because of the huge gap in time and buying things in the black market, when I was a younger person, like it was like you were getting what you were getting at that
Mm,
point, and that was it. And now, to really be able to understand, like, what I like and be able to read descriptions and like, oh, like this is more physical, oh, this is more mental, and being able to, or um, somebody that I know that grows not in the state, but I have finally been able to try their bud, and just be like, oh, just really appreciating the differences of the three types that I have right now, um, and just where that when it wouldn't even have been possible before, but I'm even more motivated because of Perception Farms.
yeah, definitely. I feel like the learning the differences of what's the sativa, the indica, the terpenes in the different strains. I feel like that is really the next thing that a lot of people, or people have already been working on that, but I
Hmm.
feel like that's
Hmm.
really kind of the biggest next step of figuring out what those are and how those affect different people and your own personal body chemistry. I think there's a lot of talk about sativa and indica isn't as big of a difference as people think it is.
Hmm.
I think that it
Hmm.
tends to be about other things as well. But yeah, that's a big area of study. Um,
So I would actually
so
like to ask you a question back because this is something I've been thinking about and wondering about edibles. I feel like when you buy edibles, it's really about the type of edible that you're buying, whether it's chocolate or a gummy or a cookie, and I feel like they're maybe on the medical side, and I guess this is my question back to you because this doesn't sound like a question thus far. It is, are you aware of labeling for the experience of the high with edibles? Because almost everything I've purchased is you're just buying the type of edible at the dosage, and it's really not getting into what the effects might be for you.
right. So uh, I definitely am not an expert on this, but I do remember hearing somebody telling me that it might have been somebody at a dispensary. I can't remember. Somebody who worked at one.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like they said when it comes to edibles, sativa, indica doesn't matter. I mean, I guess I've heard
Mm-hmm.
people say it doesn't matter anyway, but
Hmm.
I think when it comes to edibles, that's even more exaggerated. Right? It doesn't matter as much as it's more about the dosage of
Hmm.
THC
Yep.
or CBD.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I feel like yes, because I think I've noticed that as well because they don't really mention that in the packaging. But I do think that there's probably a lot more involved in that. I think that I've maybe seen edible packages that maybe say hybrid or something, but I don't. It doesn't seem as common. It's more about how much THC is in here,
Hmm.
how much
Hmm.
CBD is in here,
Hmm.
and then yeah, is it gonna be a thing that you want to eat or drink?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Which is a whole other world, which I think is hilarious because there's like French onion soup and drinks. And yeah, I mean, there's the typical chocolates and gummies, but it's literally just anything that can be made with that it has been done, which is just amazing.
Yeah. The drinks are fascinating to me. I actually bought, and I didn't drink it. I gave it to the same person I've been talking about with my nature experiences. I ended up giving it to him. Um, because I was like, I don't know how to take in this little bottle, there are 100 milligrams and there's no other measurement. And so like, how do I like manage my intake, especially when I don't take much in at any
Right.
one time? I'm like, am I going to have like a half of a shot? I'm like, okay, I'm giving it up. Here you go.
Yeah. Now, I don't know. I mean, they're probably not all like this, but I do remember seeing one that literally had little lines drawn on the
Ah,
bottle that said, I think they must have been every 10 or 15 milligrams. That's where the lines were.
yeah,
And then you just sort of have to figure it out from there.
yeah.
And, I have to be probably pretty careful with your pour or something. But yeah, I mean, that's hopefully more companies will put those lines on the bottles. But yeah, because I had the same thought. It's like, how do you figure that out? How do you measure that out? And then, if it's a drink, hopefully not, if it's a drink that's going to expire relatively near, you don't want to chug the whole thing. You don't want to
Hmm.
waste it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how many expire like that because it's usually a lot of like pops, sodas and stuff. Yeah. So edibles, science, it's all very fascinating. And that world we're just getting better and better about that. I feel like day by day, there's always people doing new research.
And it makes sense, right? Like it's just anything else that's not regulated
Hmm.
as an industry or not legal as an industry just doesn't get much attention paid to it on the scientific and research side of things. And so now we're in coming into a new realm, I guess, coming back to it because it was regulated and legal for
Right, right.
a
Or it,
while.
it was just allowed, and but there was obviously not as much science back then about it, and now we can
Hmm.
really understand and sort of, I guess, use it to our advantage to make it work for us in the best way possible,
Yep.
and have this plant keep on living. So, how much would you say pot is a part of your life?
So I guess talking about back to time, thinking about I'm 42, I'm going to be 43 soon, um, and having used it semi regularly for 5 years, taking a really big break, and then coming back to regular, like twice a week seems regular usage. It's super fascinating to like really think about that. Like it over time, the numbers don't add up, that it's a big part of my life. But I think moving forward now, I think it will be, especially because it's so easily accessible legally and without, yeah, eh, and being able to use it for sleep, um, for calming down, for anxiety, and all the good things too of just enjoying it. I can't actually imagine going back, and I would guess that especially people who are starting to use it again or for the first time in the legal market, I guess is that they also can't imagine going back.
Hmm. Yeah, I think as a state by state, as a country, I think going backwards at this point would be kind of insane. Um, so
Even
obviously
it just being part of your life, I guess I
right.
mean, like I can tell you of people in my family who didn't use it ever because it was illegal and it was just something that accessible to them are like, this is amazing. I'm so glad that I have access to it now, where I wouldn't have expected that.
Definitely. So do you feel like that you can put a percentage to, these days, clearly it's changed over the years,
Mhm.
but these days, do you feel like you could put a percentage to how much it's in your life, or some other way that you want to interpret that?
Yeah, I feel like it's a wonderful option that I take advantage of sometimes. I guess I would say it
Mm-hmm.
that way. I definitely don't feel dependent on it in any sort of way, but when it's getting me to the appropriate feeling or the experience I'm looking for, then that is something that I take advantage of. I actually can't believe how much cannabis in edible and smoking form I have in my house right now, which made me realize how little I was using it.
Mm.
More recently, where I'm like, oh, like, I don't know why I felt like I needed to buy more edibles because I haven't been using them. And I still have all this other stock, but chocolate covered espresso beans versus mint versus gummies.
Mm.
Certainly different experiences. And actually, yes, aside from the THC level, I do have different experiences from those edibles. But no, I don't know. Um, that's not answering your question of like what percentage. It's still not a real, um, I guess I would say it's not a regular part of my life, or at least that I feel like is a part of my life that I depend on.
Right. It's not like a big part of your identity. It's a thing, a
Hmm.
nice thing to have in your back pocket, maybe.
Hmm.
But what's different about you is that you are starting to get into the business side of it
Yes,
as
yes,
well.
yes.
That can't be a small thing.
No, no. It's actually funny because when I first started working on the company, when we were filling or putting together our application, it was August of 2019. So it was not legal yet. And my brother was
Mm.
like, "You don't even smoke. Like, are you like, is that good? Is that bad? Like, maybe it's good because then you won't like, try to show up to work high." And we're like, "No, okay." And he's like, "Yeah, it's probably a good thing that you don't use it." But yeah, you're right. It's because of the appreciation, even if it's not taking it in, it has been a huge like part of my life,
Yeah.
even if it's not smoking or eating.
And uh, so
Anyway, back to those percentages.
no, that's fine. I mean, I don't need a percentage. I just, I like to put it in those terms in case that's the way that, somebody wants to think about it. But you mentioned something about your brother asking, if you're not a user and you're in this business, then you're not going to go to work high. But is this something that you've actually talked about? Is how
Mm-hmm.
how do you deal with either yourselves or your employees being high at work? Is that going to be allowed? Is that not going to be allowed? Because I think it is different. First of all, it's different than being drunk, but also your business is literally that
Mm-hmm.
thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I haven't talked to anybody in the business side, I don't think really. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so our employee manual actually says that you cannot be high at work.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of that is because of the all of the security and safety measures that the state requires. And so being not tracking any part of that, I know there are some people who are really, really great and clear-headed, or at least seem to me to be
Mm-hmm.
so while they're high. They will usually be like, no, like I might be operating that way or externally seeming like that, but internally I'm not operating at like 100%.
Right.
So it just with the regulations that show up in every part of the regulated cannabis business, we're just like, no, we're not that's not going to be allowed while working. Although, or and I would say although, and we worked with people who are in the industry in a lot of other states, and that's pretty standard.
Right. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Um, but when you're off the clock and you're
Hmm.
having a maybe a employee get together when we can't actually have
Yes,
get-togethers,
yes,
that's another thing that can be thrown into the
absolutely,
mix. Yeah.
absolutely. And in fact, I would assume that an employee get together, a holiday party would
Right.
include that.
100%. So let's see. So what do you think? I mean, this is a different question for you than other people. What do you think your future with pot will be like?
Uh, Hopefully, will include being part of a business owner with recreational cannabis. And I think it's super, I don't know, I'm super excited about this industry as a whole. And of course everybody is, in so many different ways, or I shouldn't say everybody is, but so many people are and really interested in coming into this industry as other industries die. This is steady work. I'm not worried about that for my own job security with what I do, but for a lot of people who don't have, like, their work has changed or they no longer have that occupation available, this is like creating a whole new set of job opportunities for people
Mm-hmm.
that I haven't talked to one person who isn't really excited, that interviewed with us and went through the process with us, that because they're already users and they're like, finally, all the like research and the interest that I, have in this for all of the reasons, whether it's like medical or mental, just recreational, they're it's so exciting to them to have something that they're passionate about actually be able to be something that they can focus work on. um, and of course the inevitable wealth creation that's coming out of that, so especially with our company and its model, being able to just think about the future of cannabis, being able to redistribute wealth, is pretty exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Um, any final things from you before I ask my last question?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, in that case, we're done. No.
Oh, we're almost 2 hours in, so
Oh yeah, this is definitely one of the longer interviews, at least
we
on
went,
the
down the meditation path and all its
yeah
fun type
yeah.
descriptions. So
We're all about tangents here. So yeah, then my last question is just, what do you want to say to cannabis?
thank you for all of the different things that you've been able to provide to me.
I like it. I like everybody's answer for that one. It's a good one. So yeah, thank you to you for being a part of this very long interview.
Thank you for
I
inviting me.
Of course, of course. I will make sure to get all of your necessary links, if there are any, for Perception Farms, and
Mhm.
put them in the episode description. Obviously, it sounds like you've got a ways to go before that becomes a full reality. There's a lot of work involved in getting something like that set up. But hopefully it goes as easy as possible and as quickly as possible, and you can start getting that stuff out to the people that need it and the employees who need it and want to be a part of that, and can bring just help their life financially, and if there are any of those people had any run-ins with the police before all this happened, that hopefully brings a huge relief to their life. So we are going to end this episode here. Definitely was 2 parts, I'm sure. And I just want to thank everybody for listening. And obviously you can email me at whenimhighdoc at gmail.com, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I would love to hear what you think about this, and if you have any recommendations for people that I could interview, that would be great. So thank you to Jaime for being a part of this, and I just want to say thank you to everybody. Be kind to people, just be helpful. We're gonna talk more about cannabis in the next episode, whoever that ends up being. Thank you and goodbye.